Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of this series. This is Al Fadi, and we've been going through fascinating analysis and study on the different qira'at, different readings, if you wish, of the Quran, unpacking and unearthing earthing a number of issues that has been around really for a long time. We're bringing to light a number of Islamic traditions concerning those variant text readings, the so-called ahruf, the so-called qira'at of the Quran. And I think by now, if you've been watching all of the episodes that we've done to date, you will be able to see that there is a problem. And it is not the type of problem that Houston will be able to help you with. If you believe in one Quran, I hope that you throw that belief out the window, because we are talking about multiple Qurans by this time. Right now, today, this episode will even shed more light on two of the most popular readings of the Qurans, one known as the Hafs reading, which is the 1924 edition, the popular Quran all over the Islamic world, and one known as the Warsh reading, which is also popular, but specifically in North Africa. With me here, of course, to do all of this analysis and unpack all of this information for us is no other than our dear brother, Dr. Jay Smith. And we want to give really special credit to Dr. Bernie Powers, who have helped us with this particular analysis that we'll be sharing with you in this episode. Dr. Jay, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much. This is, and Bernie Powers came on my show, Fander Films, maybe about a month ago. And he brought this PowerPoint with him, and it's a PowerPoint that he has developed over the years.
Right.
This is nothing new. This is something that he's been working on, that his team has been working on. Dr. Bernie Powers spent much time in the Arab Peninsula. In the Middle East. He knows Arabic. His team, he uses only Arabists. And they have been unpacking. And the reason why they want to look at these two books is because, let me just bring them here. Here's the one right here. This is the Warsh. Yeah, that's the Warsh, and this is the Hafs. So these are the two right here. As you said, this is very popular in North Africa, and this is very popular. Let's get it right side up. This is very popular in the rest of the world. And these are the two most popular books.
Right.
So it stands to reason that you really need to look at these two books, which is fascinating because neither of these are readers. Neither of these are part of
They're just transmitters.
10. These are not part of the 7 or of the 3, which are the best of the best and the creme de la creme. These are nothing more than transmitters. These are nothing more than the rawis, who come later. They're much more insignificant, yet they are the most popular, and this is the canonical one.
One from Kufa?
This one is actually he is from Egypt.
Well, I'm sorry, I mean,
he is from Kufa.
Hafs from Kufa, Warsh from Egypt.
Warsh from Egypt.
Right.
He should be from Medina because he's from the line of Nafi. He is from the family of Nafi. He is from the stable of Nafi. But he's not even from where Nafi is from. And if anything, the Nafi would be Medina. Therefore, it would be Qurayshi. This is not Qurayshi.
And we don't know, of course, if Nafi read it the way Warsh is reading it.
That's right. And he is not Qurayshi. Remember, we looked at those differences. We looked at some variants. We saw how sometimes Warsh made a mistake and sometimes Hafs made a mistake, grammatical mistakes. So both of these are incorrect. And we just looked at one or two. There are many other mistakes that they both made. It's fascinating. But let's just take a look and see what Bernie Power does. And what I'd like to do is what he does, he looks, don't go to the slides yet, but he goes through and he does a comparison between these two, and he puts it, and he says that one Islamic scholar has found about 51 variants between them. Well, these Islamic scholars haven't done their homework very well because Bernie Power and his team has found over 5,000 variants. So you can see that the Muslims are not doing their homework. And he says that when you look at the variants, there's about 120 consonantal or long vowel variants and symbols which affect the meaning of the words. And so he's now going and doing a whole study and looking and seeing how the words affect the meaning, how they affect the practice, something like what you just did in the last two episodes. 5,000 short vowel or diacritical mark differences. Hugely significant. If you're starting to look at this and say, why is it that Muslims are trying to say that there's no difference? The reason they're saying that is because they don't think anybody's going to hold them accountable. They don't realize that there's not just Bernie Power's team. There are about 3 teams that are working on this now. Not one of them is a Muslim team. And the Muslims can say this, and that old phrase that you hear, you can fool everybody some of the time and some people all of the time, but you can't fool everyone all of the time.
Right.
What we're going to do, Tal, and I'm going to look at some of his graphs. So let's go ahead and look at the first one on the slide here. And this is what he calls type A. Will be type A, type B, type C, type C. This is his material. I want to make sure that we don't get credit for this. This is his group. They're there at MST, Melbourne School of Theology, where we both got our got our degrees. Well, you're getting your degree. I got my degree from this school. And here you find changing of the meaning of the nouns. There are 11 instances where the meaning of the nouns do change. He's only got 9 of them on the screen there. And you can just look at them if you want to just unpack 1 or 2 of them, just showing the difference. The first one is what all the Muslims look at, and that's chapter 1, verse 4.
That's right. It's fascinating, of course, is verse 4 in Surah Al-Fatiha, the opener, the particular chapter that Muslims read daily in prayers, about 17 times a day. But even it's very popular among Muslims. They read it for almost anything and everything. So here's what's describing Allah in left side, Hafs, as Malik, the owner.
Dog got out of there.
Right? And in Warsh, Malik, king. Big difference between an owner and a king, by the way.
There you go. Fatah versus Dagar Alaf on the left. And you can see, going right down the list, a bird versus flying, means of support versus valuable, the peace versus the greeting. I mean, these are completely different words, just by changing the vowelization, or in some cases, the dots. Good tidings versus proclamation. Indeed a magician and indeed magic. We went and did that one actually in the previous episode where we unpacked that one. So there you can see, and we also looked at the ones of 2 kinds of magic versus 2 magicians. So that even gets it even more perverse. And of course, big versus many, we did that one as well, 3368. Let's look at the next one. And here are type B, what he calls type B, which are changing nouns from singular to plural. You can see, we talked about the one, chapter 2, verse 184, and this has a huge difference. This has huge significance on the practice of what you do during the fast. Do you give money for just one person or for many people?
That's correct. And like we said, the one you highlighted in chapter 2, verse 184, Hafs says miskeen in a singular, one poor person. Warsh means masakin. And remember, folks, we said in the Arabic, plural means a minimum of 3 or more. In a religion of works, you accumulate deeds, and this is in the context of fasting. If you could not fast, you can substitute for that by feeding Hafs 1 person or Warsh at least 3. And you can see the barakah, the rewards will be different.
Yeah. There are 13 of these. He only has 8 listed here. We did look at chapter 66, verse 12, the plural for books versus singular for books, a book. And we saw that there was a mistake here. That was a grammatical mistake. Let's look at the next one. This is type C. These are changing meaning from a noun to a preposition or a verb. Fascinating. He made versus maker, or slaves versus with. It not only does it change the context, it also changes the word. Completely different meaning.
Right, exactly. And again, it's extremely important when you say that this is a book preserved in the preserved tablets in heaven and was revealed to someone. Which way was it revealed?
Okay. This next slide is the type D, what he calls the changes meaning to a different verb. There are 6 inferences. He gives all 6 of them there. And fascinating, look at number 2. We did this one earlier, chapter 2, verse 10. They lied versus they disbelieved. Well, what is it? Is it lying that causes the problem, or is disbelieving causing the problem? So you can see that would be a difference that would completely be a difference in theology there.
Absolutely. And again, I'm hoping that people can see the difference. The one that you highlighted the most, number 5, is very obvious.
Chapter 3, verse 146.
Qatala versus qutila. Here's what's going on. One is doing the act of fighting. That's qatala, according to Hafs. One, according to Warsh, was killed. Big difference between being alive and fighting. The other one, you have been killed.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you're the one that's involved.
And you're telling me this doesn't change meaning.
I would like to know if I'm going to be killed or just I'm going to fight. And there's a difference in vowelization. This has nothing to do with dots. There you can see a dagar aleph on the katal, and you can see it's missing, but it has a dhamma rather than a fatha in the case of warsh on the right. Let's look at some other context. Here is another type E, he calls this. This is changing a verb from active to passive. And he says that there are 7 instances. He's got the 7 that are up there. Chapter 9, verse 37 are led astray, or he leads astray. Who does the action here? And that's why it is important when you look at this as to the author of this action. It makes a difference because it has a contextual very
absolutely.
Variance.
And remember, we covered a number of those examples from being active versus passive. In the passive, now we don't even know who's doing the action. versus in the active, at least you can ascertain that, okay, maybe the speaker is the one who's doing that.
And of course, the last one, are they killed or are they simply fight? That's getting much similar to one we saw earlier with that. Now we get to F, changing a verb from a second person singular, you, to a third person singular, he. And we looked at some of these. In fact, we looked at one of these in the past former episodes. Is it he saved us or you saved us? Well, that would have theological implications, enormous theological implications in that context.
That's correct.
We go to this one here, and it's very small. I'm sorry about that because I couldn't get it into the slide enough. And this one is changing a verb from a first person plural, we, to first person singular or second person singular or third person singular. And you can see the arrows that he has there because it changes it in so many times that you can see that it has implications and it has ramifications theological as well. There are so much we could get on this. There are so many instances of this. He has 20 that is listed just on that graph. Every one of these you could write an article on. Every one of these you could write an article on and make the impact and show how the meaning is changed. When we look at the next one here, type H, it's changing a verb from a second person plural to a third person plural, they. He gives 23 instances. He only gives 22 of them there. Chapter 2, verse 140, you say versus they say. This is one that is fascinating. In some cases, it's also changed to say imperative. We're going to get to that one. And this is the ones that that Dan Brubaker has been brought up. Even this is done over and over again in many of his variants that he finds from the Razm, not from the Razm that are added at a later date because of the imperatives then introduced at a later date. They say versus you say in chapter chapter 17, verse 42. I want to look at this one. This is the type I, changing from masculine to feminine. Now, in some cases, this actually gives grammatical incorrect because masculine plural is always with a human, whereas feminine plural is always with an object. In some cases, we don't have time to unpack them here, but there are many instances where Bernie Power shows that this is a grammatical mistake by doing this.
Correct.
And a lot of times, it's not just only on Wash, it's also done on the Huff side. Huffs makes this mistake, so does Wash make this mistake. Whether or not they weren't aware of this grammatical rule or not, I don't know. But it's fascinating that this is not consistent only on one side. And then we get to type J, which is changing a statement to command. Here is the imperative versus statement. I don't know if you want to look at any of those. He said versus say. One is kala, the other is kul. You can see that the dagar aleph is taken out, and so is the fatha and replaced with the dama. And of course, it has a fascinating because Dan Brubaker does look at quite a few of these in his own contexts.
I mean, Jay, to change a verb from just sharing about a narrative and the verb is in a present or a past tense versus becoming a command now, I'm commanding you to do something, the context itself can change.
Not only that, but it's
the meaning, I should say.
In some cases, he said that's a person. To say, that's God saying it. So it's either a person that's making the command, or it is God that's making the
source of the command. Yeah.
And that's why when we've looked at these, and we have shown it, it really does change the theology. If God's saying it, that's a lot different than if just one person is saying it.
Exactly.
And we'll end with this one here, and this is the change of meaning, a different letter for a conjunction with a similar meaning. Now, looking at it face by face, it looks like they're exactly the same until you look at the reference, or until you look at the writing itself. The writing changes, yet the context stays much the same.
Exactly. Now, folks, let me just look at this, folks. You looked at all of the schedules that we've been showing you, the tables in this case. Every single one of those lines represents a different reading. Therefore, I would argue it's a different Qur'an. Don't tell me it's the same Qur'an that is preserved in heaven. It's impossible that it was preserved in all of these ways. And even it's impossible that the Prophet of Islam revealed it in all of these ways. Who did he reveal it to, these different ways? If Omar himself was surprised to discover this later on, before probably the death of the Prophet, around maybe a couple of years before he died, then we have a problem here. I mean, was that tradition even accurate? Was it just invented just to try to, water down the issue, the problems that Ibn Mujahid had to deal with, and later on others had to deal with? So you can see that you don't tell me this is one Quran. Every line represents a different Quran. Why? Because if you believe that not a single letter changed, not a single word changed, not a dot, not a diddle, you know what? Every line represents a change. Therefore, you have a different Quran.
Is it a jiddle or is it a diddle? Right
a
there.
Diddle,
it changes the context right there. Your example by accident.
A tiddle.
We're going to end with just this last picture here because this is the picture where that all started. This is a picture. I'm not going to give you I'm not going to show you the video. You can go up on Vander Films and see the video. All we had to do is hold those 26 up. Back in 2016. We didn't have to do anything more. We didn't even have to unpack them. And you can see the enormous reaction we got. People were throwing things at us. They tried to grab the papers out of our hands. The third time we did this, they didn't even want us to leave the corner with those Qur'ans. Those Qur'ans, and they're saying they don't belong to you. How dare you take them? They are our Qur'ans. As if suddenly they own them because somehow, because they are in Arabic and there's their holy book, that they had right to them. What they were really trying to say is, we don't want you to show this anymore. We do not want this. We do not want this to go out to the public sphere, without realizing that you can't do that in the 21st century anymore. In the 21st century, everything gets filmed. Everything gets put up on the internet. And with the internet, it goes all over the world. It did not do any good for Muhammad Hijab to say, come, leave, don't watch this. Do not hear what they're saying. Even he was so disturbed that he had to, a number of months ago, had to go and ask Yasir Qadhi, how do you deal with this? I am not able to come up with an answer to this. And he put his hand out there. Now, can you imagine if he put his hand out there and just asked simply between the Warsh and the Hafs, which one is it? Which one is it? The Warsh or the Hafs? If he just asked for those two, 5,000 differences, I don't even think Muhammad Hijab knows that there are 5,000 differences. I don't think he's ever had anybody tell him this before. All he wants to talk about is chapter 1, verse 4, Maliki versus Maliki, because that's the only one I've ever heard Muslims comment. Well, it's no difference between owner of the day or the king. Folks, that is only one of 93,000 of them.
Right.
And so it's fascinating for Muslims. If you're going to make these claims, support them. If you're going to say there's one Quran, source it. Please stop wasting our time saying that these books are exactly the same. You see now, we've just given you 11 different categories of 5,000 instances where they are different. They do change the meaning. And if these are the two most popular you have, and there are 30, there's another 28 on top of this, and you cannot, if you haven't even looked at these, then you must be careful of what you say in public. We're going to hold you accountable. And as long as we continue to hold you accountable, you're going to have to come up with a response.
Right. And what I want to show is an important thing here, and hopefully we can zoom in a little bit. Folks, they're telling you this Quran is according to the narration of Warsh. What does that tell you? This Quran is according to the narration of Warsh, which means there is other narrations, which is the case. I mean, if you look at all those samples that Jay has been showing you, each one of them, at least I respect the people who put this together. They're being honest with you. They're telling you this is according to this reading, according to this particular narration. You'll see this identification. Notice the narrator is the bottom, the reader at the top. The reader at the top, right there.
In this case, it's the other way around, because
this
this is a reader, these are the narrators.
Right.
So
Exactly.
the smaller ones are the narrators, the bigger ones are the readers. They even make a distinction
Exactly.
between the bigger one are the better ones, the smaller ones are the lesser ones. Fascinating.
Right.
There's visually even showing you which is the most important. And you notice both the Warsh and the Hafs are the smaller.
And thanks to
small
Jay,
ones.
of course, I invested a lot of money in buying all of those for my library now.
Just this morning, I know. And I hope the rest of you do as well, but not because we want to have Qurans on our shelves. What we want to show is you cannot keep saying this in public anymore. You've got to now start owning this. And please, this is not from God. This is not from Muhammad. This is not even from Uthman. These only begin to appear in the 8th century, 736, up until 905. Folks, this is nothing more than a man-made book with many different thoughts, many different handprints. Hand after hand after hand wrote their own Quran. Up to around 700 of them have now written their own Qurans. We're back to 30, and now we're back to 1, and they've got the wrong one. And we're going to be going into this one next. This is one I want to unpack, because when you look at this one, the Hafs, you're going to find there are lots of problems with this one.
Well, folks, once again, I hope you're enjoying this series, and I hope you guys are having a watch parties, and I hope you're sharing it with many. and I hope you are interacting with your Muslim friends. Guaranteed. Don't assume. Guaranteed. It's 110% that your Muslim friend had no clue that something like this existed. By the way, just an advance warning, they're going to call us all kind of names, me and Jay. That's fine. Don't take it personal. Let them investigate the issue. Forget about us. It's not about us. It's about them. Why do you think we're doing this, by the way? We're doing it for them, for their sake. I mean, I got nothing to gain. I found Jesus. Jay got nothing to gain. We both believe in the Lord and serve in Him. We want them to come to this beautiful camp of following Christ. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not going to earn good deeds on account of them converting. I can't convert a fly, by the way. Only God can do this. We want to share with you the truth, and we want to leave you with this information. You know why? Because one day, on Judgment Day, you'll be reminded that you watched this video, you watched the information, and you just basically shoved it aside, didn't want to do anything with it. And you know what? Only the truth will set you free. Until we meet again next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, Sira International. Also, click on the bell so that you can receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or we go live. And I would like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking on the link right below, and that way you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you on how you can give to our channel. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.